Namaste and welcome to Basic Tips on Alignment for Common Yoga Postures. My name is Laura Ann and I am an experienced registered yoga teacher through the National Yoga Alliance. And I've been teaching yoga since 2003. I basically teach beginner to moderate classes, hatha yoga classes. And today I just want to give you a few tips on alignment when you're doing some of the common yoga postures in your yoga classes. So the first one that we're going to do is just a basic easy pose. So I'm already sitting in an easy pose, but I'm going to come off of my block because one of the problems I've always had is that my knees are always higher than my hips. And we always say in our yoga classes, as much as possible, you want your hips to be higher than your knees if possible. So just take a little block and I'll turn this way and you just lift up onto the block. And ideally, you want to sit forward of the block. So without it slipping out from under you, you just sit forwards on the block and then your hips are higher than your knees. That helps to keep your hips higher than your knees. And then the other thing it does, it helps you sit in a neutral spine. So typically you'll hear a yoga teacher say, pull the fleshy part, if you're just sitting on your mat, pull the fleshy part away from your sit bone. This helps to widen your hips and it just gives you a better seat, so to speak, when you're sitting in an easy pose. Keeping the spine in neutral. And one of the reasons we want to keep the spine in neutral, of course, is so that we do have good posture. I'm also a licensed massage therapist and I work in corporate massage. And one of the main complaints that I also hear is that when people come in with tight shoulders or their back is rounded and they say, oh, I have back pain, upper back pain. And I'll say, well, why is that? And they'll say, well, I just have poor posture, and I have to remind myself to sit up nice and tall. So we want to avoid, as we age, having pain because of poor posture. And it's just healthier for the body. So that's one of the main reasons in yoga that one of the reasons we advocate for proper posture. And one of the most important reasons is for health, so that you are practicing safe and you don't injure yourself. And so that being said, the next posture, and I'm going to show you, we're going to take the block out. And you can also, by the way, you can fold up a blanket and sit up on your blanket as well. So the next posture we're going to do is table pose. And ideally, you want your shoulders to be above your elbows. I'll turn this way. Shoulders above your elbows, elbows above your wrists. You're spreading your fingers wide apart. The thumbs face in towards each other, fingers point straight ahead. And you want the same amount of space between your knees and your ankles. Knees line up with your hips, ankles line up with your knees. Another way to measure that is if you take your two fists together, place them between the knees, then that'll give you the proper amount of space. And then you bring your hands back forward. Next, you don't want to lock your elbows out. You can have like a soft bend in it. But if you take your elbows out to the side, lower down, bring the elbows in toward the sides, and then lift up. So your eyes of your elbows are pointing straight ahead or towards the front of your body. They don't have to be, straight, but it's kind of like you're almost locking your arms in place without locking your elbows. You don't want to lock your elbows. And then round and unround your spine for cat-cow. So this is a common exercise that we do in yoga. And you'll notice as you round and unround your back, you don't have to tilt your pelvis up and down either, because it will just naturally happen. So you do lift your chin up and then bring the chin down as you round your back. And you can also curl your toes under and uncurl your toes too. And then from there, we take our big toes together, separate your knees for child's pose. Then you press your hips back towards your heels first. Now, if you have a problem with your knees, you can take a blanket and roll it up, or you can place a blanket, and you might have to do this one isn't big enough, but you may need to place something between your knees for safety. And you're just working toward pressing the hips toward the heels. Even if they don't come all the way, it's okay. And then you stretch your arms out long. This gives you a nice back stretch. It stretches out the upper back as well as the lower back. And then you take a couple deep breaths in and out. And then you slowly rise up, walk your hands in towards each other, and then come back up. You're going to bring your knees and your ankles back to that hip width apart or 2 fists width apart. Same thing with your hands in the front. Curling your toes under. Another common posture that we do is downward facing dog. So you start by slowly pressing your heels down toward the floor. The heels don't come all the way down. Just bicycle a little bit. But you're lifting your tailbone up, keeping a slight bend in your knee. You're also lifting, and let's come back down the table because I want to say this. I don't think I said this before. When you're engaging as many muscles as you can with each posture without forcing you, it's a gentle engagement of the muscles that you do. So you're gently lifting your shoulders away from, and your biceps, triceps away from your elbows. You're engaging your forearm muscles, gently lifting the forearms away from your wrists. And so this helps to take tension off of your wrist joint. And another thing you can do is just lift the palms of your hands. So if you just lift the palms of your hands and you feel that thick part underneath your knuckles, and you press down toward that knuckly part, and then softly lower the palms to the floor. Okay, and you've got that slight bend in your elbow and draw up and in. And then also in tabletop, you're drawing in, and you don't want to compromise your deep breathing, but you're drawing in your lower abdominal, because again, when you're in table pose, you don't want to sway your back unless you're doing cat-cow, and then you sway your back, but you're drawing your lower abdomen up and in, and then you can do your other exercises, stepping one leg back or doing your balance pose. Now, let's cover this real quick, the balance. If we're doing a spinal balance, and you step one foot straight back, you come onto the ball of the foot, you press back through the heel first, and then you want to focus on your hips. You're trying to square your hips up, square your hips with each other. So you're trying not to let one lower down too low. And a way you can do that is draw your lower abdomen up and in. And then from there, you extend the other arm, and then you can lift the leg up. Once you lift the leg up, you reset. So you lower that hip, squaring it with the other hip, and you plug in. You plug in the arm into the arm socket, the leg plugs into the hip socket, and then you feel nice and sound in that posture. Again, you can have a slight bend in the elbow, and then bring that leg and foot down, and then you go to the other side. And you lift when you're ready, you plug in the hip and the arm. Make sure you're squaring the hips off. So another way to do that, internally rotate that leg and foot so that it avoids the hip lifting, raising up. So you want to lower the hip, square it with the opposite hip. And this maybe kind of internally rotate at the thigh and through the foot. And then bring that foot down, that knee down. Realign your table, curl your toes under. Going into our next common posture, downward facing dog, lifting the hips, and then bicycling, going back to downward facing dog. And then here you can have a slight bend in your knee, realign. You're drawing your shoulders inward toward the front of the body. So you take the sway out of the upper back and gazing back toward the legs, the thighs. Take a couple deep breaths in and out. And you're kind of locking the upper and the lower body here by rotating that shoulders inward toward the front of the body to take out that slack in the upper back. Lifting your tailbone and then extending the back. Pressing down through all four corners of the palms of your hands, especially gently pressing into the fingerprints of your hands into the mat. You can bend your knees and then extend, straighten, feel in the stretch in the hamstrings. And then coming back down to hands and knees. Okay. The next thing I want to do is, let's see if we can come up to mountain pose. A couple more postures here. So going into your mountain pose, standing any way you can. You can either bring your legs, your feet, and your thighs all the way together. And this tends to be a little challenging for me because I'm not kneaded. So it's like my knees are really pressing hard into each other, whereas my feet are gently touching. So I like to just kind of step my feet apart to hip width apart, which is okay too for mountain pose. Same thing, you're rooting your tailbone, slight bend in your knees, rolling the shoulders back and down away from your ears, and rotating. So when you draw your shoulder blades in, kind of rotating. Again, we're opening our heart and maintaining that neutral spine. Find a gaze spot to stare at toward the floor, your drishti point. Take a few deep breaths in and out. And then you feel that steadiness, that stability. You're connecting with proprioception in terms of your proprioceptors, in terms of really feeling your body, where your body is in space and connecting. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. So when we're bringing ourselves to the present moment, paying attention to our body and our breath, we're heightening our awareness of proprioception of our body. So, and then just feeling that stability in mountain pose. And then from there, hands on your hips, step your feet wide apart. Just a couple more postures here that we're going to explore with a couple alignment tips. So lifting your heel of it's going to be probably your left foot, my right foot, and then pivot the toes so they point in the opposite direction. And then you're automatically kind of twist and turn a little bit. So just kind of see, maybe draw that your right hip back a little bit, and then extend the right heel. Now that might make you feel a little unstable, I apologize. But you're just pivoting so the heel extends out a bit. Bend the knee, your left knee, my right knee, and root your tailbone again. But don't root it so much. I don't want it to be so tight in the hips that you can't move in the hip area a little bit. You still want to have a little bit of movement and flexibility, and noticing how your lower back feels. Arms out to T here for warrior two. You're gazing over your fingertips. Drawing the shoulder blades in towards each other, lifting your heart and your sternum. Tucking your chin, taking a couple deep breaths in and out. And then you can kind of go backward for reverse warrior, and then forward for side angle bend. The lower body stance is the same. And what you're doing with your lower body to really stabilize, you're hugging your thighs up into your hip creases. Gently drawing the heels in towards each other isometrically without moving. Feel that stability. Feel that, that stability, that security. And then see how it feels to go back and forth. Okay, finding that balance and just moving freely, moving the upper body freely. And then come back to center. Hands on your hips, straighten the leg now. And I want to have my block handy. If you're using a block, you can place that block right on the inside of that your left foot. And you're dipping at the hip crease. And so that opposite hip tilts up. You're keeping your alignment. You're keeping a nice long alignment on both sides. So you don't want to round. You want to avoid rounding. So if you go down too far and you start rounding, you want to come up a little bit, lift up a little bit. This side of the body is nice and strong. Your right side is nice and strong. You're pressing down through all four corners of the feet, more so on the outer edge of the feet, more than likely, so that the leg does not collapse inward. At the same time, drawing your thighs up into your hips. I'm saying that again. And then you can place your left hand down on your block, right hand on your hip, your shoulder, or arm is extended. If the arm is extended, palm is facing forward. We tend to turn, a lot of times I see people, they turn that palm away, and then you collapse the shoulder, making it go inward, and you want to open it outward, Create that freedom in the shoulder, avoiding pain. Also, you're extending energy out equally throughout both hands. You can use your imagination. Imagine you're extending energy out through your fingertips, up through the right hand, down through the left hand. And then from there, hands on your hips, bending, carefully bending the knee, and then turn that foot forwards. Pivot the other foot out to the side, doing the same thing on the other side. Rooting the tailbone, shoulders down, drawing the thighs up and in toward the hip crease. Isometrically draw the heels in towards each other. And noticing that the shoulders stay above the hips. So we're not tilting until we do the triangle, warrior one. Our shoulders stay strong over our hips. Arms out to T. You turn the palms up or down, up or down. And then you go back and forth a couple times. I just said we're not tilting, are we? But we tilt. Okay. So shoulders out, hands on your hips. Now we're straightening the leg, dipping into that right hip, your right hip, drawing the thighs up into the hip. And you should feel your like a release or a supporting of the spine when you draw the thigh muscles up. Heels draw in isometrically. And then we're doing the same thing on this side. We're trying not to collapse on the lower side and try not to round on the outside. The side of the body stays strong. You're extending in both directions. And then you can do your hand placements. Gazing up toward the thumb or down toward the hand. The only thing we ask you not to do is let your head hang off your neck because your head is just an extension of the spine. And then from there, placing your hands, bend the knee, turn the toes forward, and then you can just go heels, toes. And thank you so much. I just want to end with a little sound vibration. Thank you for joining me. I just want to say one other thing. Years ago, I used to work in outpatient mental health as well as at the psych hospital, Michigan Psychiatric Hospitals in the Michigan state of Michigan. Oh, can't we talk? And they always talked about body language. So another reason we teach alignment in yoga is because we want to feel more confident. We want to feel more alive and engaged in our lives. And we want to feel more connected in ourselves. And when I worked in the mental health field, I had a couple different jobs, and I had to take a lot of training. And one of the training was in communications. And in the communications training, it taught us that only about 30% of your communication is verbal, and about 70% of your communication is nonverbal. So people are watching how you carry yourself. Not that it should matter how others feel about you, but you want to be a positive. You want to be positive in your community. You want to be a positive expression, the best expression of the person you can be in a positive way, so that you never know the impact that you have on others. So that's one of the spiritual reasons I like to teach alignment, is so people can feel strong in their bodies, so they can feel, and not just spiritually strong, not just physically strong, but spiritually and emotionally strong, so that you are creating a positive impact on the people that you have an impact on. Maybe it's just your family, maybe it's your children, maybe your teacher, but you want to have that positive impact, even if you don't say one word. And that's why I always thought, wow, it was amazing that in that training, they told us that 70% of our communication is body language. So keep that in mind next time you go out in a crowd, and think about how you want to show up and what kind of vibration, energy, or how you want to communicate your body language to other people in a positive manner, hopefully. And then the next example is kind of a silly example, but one of the things I did with the state of Michigan is I was a recipient's rights advisor, and we had to do investigations into complaints of mental ill adults in the psych hospitals. And so we had to do the SCAN training, and SCAN stands for Scientific Content Analysis. And they taught us, how to know if someone is being honest or not. We had to do an investigation, and one of the things they told us was, do not use this with your family. You will drive your family and friends crazy. And a lot of times my husband gets upset because I'll say, oh, wait a minute, he said that a certain way, so you mean such and such. So I do have to watch that, but it's all good and it's all positive. So I hope that you have enjoyed just some basic tips on alignment using some of the common yoga postures that you do in yoga class. So with that, I just want to use a little sound vibration to say thank you for being with me. May you have a wonderful rest of your day, and namaste. Peace.